Welcome and thanks for joining me on this little talk where I'm going to talk about how to improve alignment to help set your abs up for success, particularly when it comes to working on a diastasis recti. Now, first to think about is that I wouldn't be able to talk about or address a diastasis without talking about breathing and bracing strategies. How we breathe and brace helps set up not only how we lengthen in our abs and our core canister, but also how we brace and create tension across our abs. Now, we're not wanting to walk around all the time like everything's stiff and we're in this neutral position in our spine the whole time, but it's kind of a good starting point to think about, okay, this is a place of centering to then give us a better place to lengthen, shorten from, and move more dynamically with more freedom. We're looking at abs just like anywhere else in the body of, okay, it's a muscle that we want to be able to fully lengthen and fully shorten. This allows us for full movement option availability and also allows us to have improved resting tone and position in the middle. If you have certain areas that live in more of a lengthened state, then at rest, we're going to be in more of that lengthened state at the end. We might mask this with some gripping, which then can affect how our abs can function and how our breathing can function. But we can think about how, okay, we then maybe need to work on training our abs in more of this shortened position to give it more of that full movement option and improve that middle range and position. Now, if we think of muscles on the flip side, we need those areas to then lengthen to help decrease the resistance in our body. So let's talk about this in terms of abs. So if we think about with a diastasis, we have lengthening across the front side of our abs. Maybe top to bottom, maybe side to side. Just kind of depends on your diastasis, where it is, and the depth and the width behind it. But so if we think about it in here, as I lengthen it in the front, reciprocally, I'm gonna get more compressed in the back. I can do all the shortening that I want in the front, but if I don't reciprocally teach the back side how to lengthen and let go, then I'm gonna have a hard time finding abs on the front, maybe have to over-recruit, which can affect the balance in my ab engagement in the front. We want the diastasis to be able to be healed with both working on the rectus, which pulls the sides together, as well as the TAs that help with the tension and how much your abs sink in. So that is important to consider when we're looking for this balanced brace of not always just being kind of rectus dominant or never training our rectus and only working TAs with it. So along the same lines of thinking about this position here, we can see how my rib cage positioning is going to affect what's going on in my abs. So what I don't want to do is just pull down here, but instead think about changing the shape of the rib cage. So in the end, our rib cage is kind of this cylinder shape where we want to think about that it then has the ability to expand in this 360 fashion and compress together in a 360 fashion. Now, kind of taking a step back here, let's talk a little bit more about breathing and then we'll talk more about rib cage and abs here in a second. But so with that rib cage here, we have the diaphragm that goes underneath. It's an umbrella-shaped muscle that attaches all around that rib cage here. We have our abs that wrap around here, our multifidi in the back, and then we have our pelvic floor on the bottom. So when we go to inhale, our diaphragm pulls down, which helps pull our rib cage out. The diaphragm pushing down into our organs is what makes our kind of belly and sides and back descend, and then our pelvic floor lengthen. Now up top, that's where our lungs are. So as we continue to inhale, we also need chest wall expansion and this kind of upper rib cage expansion here in an outward fashion. Then when we go to exhale and a relaxed exhale, it should just be a natural recoil and lift back up from that stretch that happened on the inhale. When we go to brace, we can think about kind of turning up the dial of that exhale and having that brace meet the demand of the activity in front of us. So I like thinking about how we exhale helps us think about how we end up bracing, right? We can think about the inhale helps set up that exhale. So thinking back to that rib cage positioning, if I'm more here, we can see how the back side of my rib cage, my back here is more compressed. So if I'm trying to inhale, my inhale is going to go with the path of least resistance. It's going to go out into the front. Then I exhale and it's kind of like, that's as far as I could come back in. Or maybe I exhale and drop everything back down. This can contribute to more of a rectus dominant pattern. This can contribute to more kind of upper ab dominance that puts pressure down onto our lower abs and pelvic floor. It can also kind of pull on our neck and drop our pump handle and just affect then setting up the next inhale with it. So instead, what we're going to think about doing is maybe I position myself into ways where the back is lengthened and the front's kind of compressed. And then I go to inhale and think about more breath going into my back and my sides, maybe in my chest wall, upper thoracic down into my pelvic floor instead of out into my belly. And then exhale and relax into it. We can use these kind of rib cage and breathing mobility drills to help kind of knock off the rust in the ribs that are a little bit stickier, to help get more breath and expansion to go to the areas that are harder to move and expand on, and then assist on the exhale so that we're not having to over recruit those superficial abs so much. We're able to find more of those intercostals and basically kind of change the shape of the rib cage instead of just changing the orientation. And they can get really fun where you can kind of, get into different pretzel positions depending on what nook and cranny of your rib cage or your pelvic floor you're looking to get into to help balance out that inhale and that exhale. But go ahead and kind of explore here for a minute with me and put a hand on your abs here and then wrap your other hand around your side. We can kind of feel where we're feeling our ribs and also just below our ribs. So as you go to inhale, can you feel your abs, your side, and your back and your ribs all expand equally out together? When you go to exhale, do you feel them come back in? So again, we'll kind of go from the side, taking a couple breaths here. So inhaling again, and then exhaling, back and together. So that was a little tiny bit of a forceful exhale just to kind of emphasize the movement with it. But oftentimes with someone that has a diastasis, they might feel how all the breath goes out in front. So they might actually need to keep a pinch of tension in the front to direct more breath into our sides and back. So that's where it's important to not only work on expansion and mobility in this back area from those positional breathing drills, but also to backfill it with, okay, now let's load our abs and work on the idea of breathing under a brace, being able to maintain some tension here while still getting that side and back expansion, breath to go down into our pelvic floor, to feel that eccentric lengthening of our side abs and our pelvic floor, and then the exhale and everything come up. What we don't want is to brace and then not be able to breathe, or to have all the breath go up into our neck and create neck and head tension with it. So now to kind of explore a little bit up top, we can also have our hand here and a hand up at our chest, and we'll wrap around like this. And as I go to inhale, can you feel your chest wall expand? Now this is different than going up. This is thinking about expanding forwards. And it's not going to be as dramatic as down here because these ribs are tucked in tighter and closer together. Same thing, we can have hands on abs and chest and think about, okay, when I inhale, can I feel both kind of expanding, or does it all go to my belly? Does my chest not expand at all? So yeah, again, thinking about how we can get into those different nooks and crannies to help distribute the load of what happens when we go to inhale and then what happens when we go to exhale. When you exhaled, you can now put our hand on our lower abs and upper abs and go to inhale and then exhale. Did your lower abs pooch out, or did everything compress back together equally? So again, we might need a bias if you had that tendency to kind of dominate the upper abs. We might need to work on, okay, let's get more expansion up top, less going out into the lower belly. And then as you go to exhale, biasing more of that lower ab lift and flattening and kind of holding back from pulling those ribs down here so much with it. Okay, so again, we can kind of start to see how we need to see what the person in front of us is presenting with and how we need to work on different areas to help bring more balance to that engagement. Now, along those same lines, we can think about how this ties into the kinetic chain of it's not just about here, but about our shoulders and our hips and even our pelvic floor. So if every time I go to raise my arm overhead and my shoulder blade can't move independently from my from my rib cage, I got to reach my arm overhead and I move from my spine instead. This is going to put stress on my diastasis and lengthen it. So what we want to work on is this idea of, can my ribs be set while my scapula moves independently from it with whatever direction we want it to go? Because people can also pull back and flare forward here, and they're getting more of the movement from their spine instead of from that shoulder blade to make everything a core exercise. Along those same ideas, we can think about how using that scapula position of, okay, maybe your chest wall didn't expand so much. Can I work on this idea of my shoulder blades sliding back, keeping those ribs down, and then getting some inhale into my chest wall to help open that space up so that it doesn't go out into my belly. And then that also can help with the ability of being able to bring those ribs down without dropping the chest with it. We can then think about how we can use our serratus. So this is a muscle underneath our shoulder blade that invests into our external obliques. We can use a reach through as we go to exhale to help close ribs. This can also help open up the back. So we can inhale back, exhale, reach a little bit more to help facilitate that closure and help those abs not have to work so hard because we're giving it a little bit more support from other muscles. You can then backtrack and work on just ab stuff in isolation, but sometimes the abs just need that little bit extra assist in the beginning to help set it up for a little bit more success. If you need help kind of feeling more widening here and tend to have more of a narrow ISA, you can reach with your inhale and feel how that helps bring more expansion to your abs here on the side and your ribs so that it all just doesn't go out in the belly. Too often people think about diaphragmatic breathing as, yes, I'm doing diaphragmatic breathing, but it's actually just their belly moving back and forth versus actually getting that rib cage to expand and that diaphragm to pull down. Reciprocally, people maybe feel the rib cage movement, but their diaphragm actually sucks up and in, and they're going up into their neck. So we want that diaphragm to pull down, but we also want those ribs to expand out with it. Now, when it comes to the pelvis, we can think about if you have a pelvis that is more tipped forwards, this is going to lengthen our abs from top to bottom. To correct it, we might try to pull and tuck under. Now, a lot of times this is going to make us kind of muscle into that position and use more of our superficial and kind of mover abs of our rectus and our obliques and kind of have them be one step ahead of our transverse abdominals and create more of a bread loaf look or minimize the tension that we can create across the midline. So instead of driving that change in movement from those lower abs, maybe we need to work on our hamstrings. So with this pelvis in more of a tip forward posture, hamstrings come up and attach into your sit bones here. So your hamstrings are actually in more of a lengthened position. And if you think back to the beginning where I was talking about wanting balance in all those muscles, we then maybe need to work on shortening those hamstrings, taking that pelvis into the other position with just hamstrings, not glutes or hip flexors or abs even, to help improve the resting position of our pelvis so that my abs are set up for more success to be able to get more of a balanced brace. We can also think how that's going to help with the stack of our rib cage over our pelvis to help with the breathing and bracing kind of dynamics and coordination with it. Now, we can also think too, from our pelvis standpoint, when we're pregnant, our pelvis will tend to widen in the front and get more compressed in the backside with it. This helps with stability. This helps accommodate for the baby wearing in the front, but now it's going to lengthen our abs from side to side. So you might try to do some TA work of feeling those hip bones pull towards each other, but those abs are in more of a lengthened position, so it has a hard time getting there. So what we can do is by working on some glute opening, feeling the backs of the sit bones widen, reciprocally helps bring those front hip bones closer together. It makes it easier to find those lower TAs. Finding adductors can help pull that pelvis wide in the back and narrow in the front as well. So again, instead of just saying, good luck abs, hope it works out for you, we can use other muscles to help set them up for more success. Along those same lines, all that compression in the backside of the pelvis is going to affect our pelvic floor. If we can't inhale down, we're going to inhale out or up. So we can think about how addressing pelvic floor tightness and opening up the back of the hips is going to help with, again, not overstressing that diastasis. We can also think that the back side of the pelvic floor can be tight while the front side can be weak. And the front side connects to those adductors and it connects with our lower TAs. So by getting more of the back to open up, we can then also bias more of the front to lift and contain and compress to help bring more balance in how we inhale and exhale. And again, kind of improve that alignment so that now we can just inhale, exhale, and everything happens in a more equal way. So hopefully this gives you some ideas of how it's not just about ab engagement, but maybe we need to look at some other areas to work on setting up those abs for success. One last area to think about when it comes back to the abs is thinking about not just being in this sagittal plane or bracing and holding in an isometric, but working in some rotation to the picture. As we go to rotate, so as I'm rotating towards my right, I'm going to use my left external obliques and my right internal obliques to connect together to help me turn towards the right. This is another way where we can work on back expansion because I'm getting this connection here, or again, how back tightness can make it hard for me to connect in the front. We can also think how then the opposite pairing of muscles eccentrically lengthen. That gives them a better place to then concentrically contract from. So muscles have a hard time when they're in a fully lengthened position to contract. They also have a hard time when they're in a fully shortened position to contract. So by doing some of this rotation work, this is going to help us work on that dynamicness in our core. It can also help with contributing to more of a balanced brace versus kind of just going here with it, but helping us stay nice and long and tall and create that compression in the front, but while keeping that length, which helps us keep that stack of rib cage over pelvis, helps bring better balance between our superficial abs and our deep core, and helps with the diaphragm pelvic floor coordination when we go to breathe. So hopefully that gives you some ideas, and I'd love to have the opportunity to explore more of these with you in our pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise specialist course, where we bring research, exercises, case studies, talk about all the different ways where maybe person A, you would address it this way, person B, you would address it this way, depending on what your findings are as you go and take them through from further assessment. So if you're feeling like you're struggling with helping the clients that you work with, or just want to kind of take your knowledge to the next level and mesh it with what you already know, then come join us and check out our course and really get into deep diving into all the great details that we have for you there.